Welcome back. The government's lights remain off, states are suing, and then we've got lots of partisan messaging lies going all over the place. And, if I was to rate this whole government shutdown, I would give it 2 snaps. This is Talk Show. Goodness, our main story tonight, one of 2 main stories, I think, at least for this episode. Everyone is seeing this in the news. It's all over the place. You have heard this. The SNAP Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is at risk of defunding basically November 1st. So that's today. Wow, today as I record this, the stuff has happened. Anyway, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I have done some fact checking and I've dug into this a little bit. Here's my take on the government shutdown and the SNAP benefits being at risk. First of all, because the government is shut down, the reason this is happening is the Department of Agriculture, USDA, basically said that SNAP benefits may not be issued on November 1st. They need the funding to be restored, so to speak. A bunch of states, places like Georgia and several other states, issued warnings that eligible households probably will not receive the benefits or their November allotments, as one might say. Then you have many of the social commentary folks popping up, such as Time Magazine has called this a man-made disaster, potentially one of the worst man-made disasters in terms of food security. So that's kind of interesting. The real point is that the story, this whole situation highlights the human cost of the shutdown. It's not just federal policy drama, which is really frustrating, but it's essentially real families at risk of going hungry. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more during the episode. We'll come in and out on some of this, but I think we can all agree that in a system where able-bodied working adults need this program to sort of supplement a full-time job, like if we need that in our system, something is wrong. I think that might resonate with many folks. It resonates with me. I mean, I don't understand. There's also like knock-on effects of this. There are things that are within SNAP or funded by USDA that are even more heartbreaking to consider the fact that they're on the chopping block. So Head Start is one of those programs. That's as many as 65,000 kids in particular whose food benefits are now basically effed straight up the A. Great. When are we going to tax the billionaires? Rabble, 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 rabble. I guarantee that Trump is going to make this huge show of getting the SNAP benefits funded in some way, shape, or form. I saw, I think it was on Midas Touch the other day, he calls out, there was a comment from Trump saying that they're going to figure out how to get the funding, but that it's still going to take some time. So they're going to make sure that it hurts. There's going to be an unavoidable situation here where people are going to feel the food benefits being gone. So that sucks. The thing is, like, my real concern about this all the misinformation about it, the partisan messaging, which we'll talk about in just one second, his sort of fan base, the MAGA base, basically will eat this shit up. They're basically, as soon as he gets the funding back in for SNAP benefits, they're somehow going to forget all the other things that have happened, and they're going to say, oh, good. Thanks, Mr. Trumpy boy. You done saved our SNAP benefits. Now we can go back to hating the Democratic boogeyman, like we always did. Dislike. Big disliker of that. Not a big fan. Sorry. Hate it a lot. As I was saying, lots of misinformation out there. So I did a teensy bit of my own research. I didn't do a tremendous amount, but, I did, we'll call it a little chat GPTing. And then I took the time to sort of like click into the sources and links that ChatGPT provided to me. So here's what I want to call out. First and foremost, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the CBPP, sounds official. Hopefully that's not an agency that's been gutted and replaced with sycophants. But the number is 15.7 million workers, about 10% of all workers, were in households where someone was receiving Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits in the prior year. So this data comes from 2024. Obviously, 2025 hasn't ended yet, so there's partial information. So that's the first thing that stands out to me. Almost 16 million workers throughout households of different shapes and sizes need SNAP benefits. That's a lot of people. Like 10%, 1 in 10, that's a surprising number. At least for me, I didn't think it was quite so significant. I knew lots of people needed it. Now, a couple of caveats on this because I want to make sure, thanks to a few years now of working with legal content review and many a lawyer in my marketing role as my day job, there are some important caveats. So 15.7 million workers does not mean that there are that many workers themselves individually enrolled in SNAP. Big caveat. It just means that the households they live in used SNAP. So some of the workers may not personally receive the benefits. And then the household count is actually 21.6 million. And I didn't bring this up as the first number because it includes households with a working adult. So it could be folks who are unemployed, could be retired, could be disabled persons. And then there's other things like households could have multiple workers, yada, yada, yada. Feel free to dig into some of those caveats on your own. I'll include those basically in the description. But I think that's a really important call out. It's not necessarily 16 million workers need SNAP benefits. It's these people live in a household where those benefits are used. Okay, let's keep going. Now, for me, the next question is how many sort of full-time employed workers personally receive SNAP benefits? Like, can we actually figure out how many of those folks are out there? Not so much just the household or that they live in a household where the benefits are being taken. So here we go. So according to the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, again, we pray that these numbers have not been doctored yet, but this is reporting on previous numbers. So I think the most recent one, GAO reported in 2018. So we're a little behind the times here, 6-7 years behind the last time these numbers were updated, but nearly 9 million wage-earning adults were receiving SNAP benefits. Okay, a couple of quick caveats just to make sure I'm doing my due diligence. 9 million figure is wage-earning adults living in SNAP households. So that's as close as I can get based off of numbers on the internet. So really what that means is that they're working 35 plus hours per week in sort of the way that this number was calculated. This all kind of blew my mind when I sort of looked at those numbers. As many as 16 million households, somewhere between 16 and 20 million households are receiving SNAP benefits. As many as 9 million individual people out there are receiving SNAP benefits, depend on that, right, to supplement the income that they make in their regular job. That is insane. Even the first number, 10% of all workers, is crazy. But if you think about 1 in 20 individuals needs this just across the entire United States, that's pretty crazy. What I have not had a chance to do, and I'd be curious to look at this, is where it is in terms of states. Is it worse in red states or blue states? So on and so forth. Maybe I'll explore that in a future episode. But let's be real here. When you hear stories about actual impact of this, it's not a political battle. It's now actual people, millions of people, potentially not having food, not knowing where lunch is or dinner or breakfast the next day, something like that. This is really scary stuff. There's a lot of like heartbreaking TikToks and other social media posts out there where folks are basically saying like, I need this, like I depend on this. And if you have, a disabled family member, or there's lots of folks that can't work for various reasons, or are a single sort of breadwinner for a household, that's scary if all of a sudden this like food support stuff disappears. It's terrifying. Not knowing where your next meal is. It's all good news here on the talk show. A bit of goodish news, question mark, is that states are suing over this stuff. And at least 24 states are involved now. And the good news is that there are some red states as well. It's not just blue states. Georgia is an example. Florida is an example where there are things happening to try to support the folks that need this. So for me, as a bit of splash of legal drama to the SNAP story, we're not just talking about policy risk now. We've also talked about the human impact, but we're now going to see lots of litigation, states versus federal government. We'll see tons of this in the news coming up. The red states, as I said, have joined the fray. I appreciate this because it does at least seem like America's starting to get that big mad that we need, the real angry energy that gets shit done. So again, the good news-ish is that some states are proactively alerting households and making contingency plans ahead of the SNAP cutoff. Some of those states I just mentioned, Georgia, Florida, New York is also one of them. They've basically updated it so that beneficiaries know what to expect, so at least there's transparency as opposed to no information or nothing. The whole SNAP story highlights the partisan messaging that's going on. Republicans are sort of framing the shutdown and the conditions for reopening in terms of what I'll just broadly call contested cultural issues. So they're making up malarkey that is intended to just hit these hot button issues for the MAGA base. So, for example, they're saying the reason the government is shut down is that Democrats want transgender surgeries for minors. Other ridiculous nonsense shit like that. Now, the counterframe of this, and I'm sort of seeing it a little bit of mixed messaging, but Democrats are trying to at least say that the issue is health insurance premiums, cost of living, and affordability. I do appreciate that, having seen Bernie Sanders talk about this on a few different shows. He was on Jon Stewart earlier this week. Great interview. If you didn't see it, we love Bernie. But basically, Bernie is saying that the Democrats straight up are trying to fight for the affordability of health insurance premiums as they are now. And as they are now, they're not super affordable. Let's be real, especially in a country that is supposed to be super wealthy. We pay crazy high insurance premiums. We have expensive healthcare. So when you hear these messages, you hear Republicans say it's this cultural stuff, and Democrats are just like, no, people can't afford health insurance. There's a certain saliency to the points that are being made here. It's hard for me to look at that Republican message and go, wow, even wrap my head around it. I don't understand how people can think that that's why Democrats don't want to fund SNAP benefits. I don't know how USDA food aid causes transgender surgeries for minors and other crazy things like that. But they really want you distracted. That's, I think, the main point of this. So this is like less breaking news, more like the meta story of how the sides sort of tell the message. And that's really, at the end of the day, all a distraction. Don't get distracted. Release the Epstein files. Gosh dang it. We want Miss Grijalva, whose last name I brutally butchered in the last show, but we want her to be brought in finally. Can we get her confirmed into office? She's that last magical vote. I think it's 218 votes, and then the Epstein files can be hopefully released. I don't know. We know they've been redacted into oblivion, but the smart people out there, especially using AI, 100% can fill in those redacted blanks. So again, don't lose sight of the narrative. Trump and his cronies basically are just looting the government. So it's your taxpayer dollars snorted straight up his nose and then pooped right down the human centipede of the Broligarchy. I tried to get an AI to recreate that image, but it gave me an error message, and apparently now I'm on some other list. I'm on enough lists. Our next story, continuing on with world news, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we need to be aware of it. I think it's important for Americans to be in the know, and we struggle with that. The whole Israel-Gaza conflict continues to be horrifying, frankly, and there's still a lot of distraction. There's still a lot of other news that's trying to get your attention and take you away from what's actually happening. Reminder, still a genocide, still bombings, still bad things happening, and there was supposedly a ceasefire. Now, that's kind of the most recent news, is that I think 2 or 3 nights ago, there were overnight strikes near the Gaza strips. The Guardian reports that something near like 104 Palestinians, that number might be even higher now, were killed, including kids, could include children. So horrifying stuff. Israel says that it will abide by the ceasefire again. Reuters reports this. For me, the scary part about this is how sort of fragile the ceasefire is. How the sort of pauses that we think are legitimate or potentially strong enough to last, they potentially can collapse quickly. And the humanitarian cost being borne on Gaza is horrifying while diplomacy stumbles to figure shit out. I think we can all just agree that the genocide is unacceptable. So help me understand it, right? I just don't have the default capacity to just hate another human because of, I don't know, religion or any of these things. I mean, unless I get to know you and then you prove yourself to be a shithead, then I reserve the right to hate you. But most of you out there, you're mostly just lovely, and don't forget it because I say so. How can you look at this situation, the displacement of millions of people, all this death? How can you go, yep, that was the right solution for this part of the world? No. Goodness gracious, great balls of Middle Eastern fire. I want to keep cruising here. Hurricane Melissa has been visiting. I think most recently we went, and I say we as if I'm part of the hurricane. Most recently, Melissa, I think, went through Jamaica and Cuba. I think when it hit Jamaica, hang on, let me just check my notes. So it hit Jamaica as a Category 5 hurricane, which means winds could be up to 185 miles per hour. When I was writing this episode, I think it was Thursday evening or so. I'm filming this on Saturday morning, November 1st. It's already hit Cuba and going past. The whole east coast of the U.S. is experiencing some fun, heavy winds and rain and all over the place. New England in particular, we don't normally get a lot of hurricane action, but this time Melissa is just so tremendous in proportions that she's tickling our feet up here. Anyway, so Hurricane Melissa, crazy stuff. If you're not familiar with this, different weather services, governments, etc., essentially will fly planes with measurement devices, etc., and things like that into hurricanes. So they fly into a hurricane, they're measuring things, and they're capturing footage. And let me tell you, the footage is nothing short of spectacular. So have a nice little adventure here. I found this footage to be completely mind-blowing. So I wanted to share it with you. Maybe you'll find this just as interesting as I did. But this is footage from the aircraft that was flying into the eye of Hurricane Melissa. It's incredibly clear. Something about this is totally breathtaking to me. It looks like a sheer wall of snow, like some sort of insane, perfectly circular mountain valley that's been frosted. Almost like you stirred the Cool Whip while it was slightly frozen. Okay, not gonna watch the whole thing. It's 3 minutes long. Feel free to check it out. Shout out to this person, AJ, on YouTube, who posted this footage. It's absolutely spectacular. This one I also found pretty funny. This is what it's actually like getting bounced around as they fly through. Oh boy. I would pucker. Okay. Did you see that? Tons of crap just flew off of the... Hang on, let me go back really quickly. No, I missed it. I went too soon. Whoa! Oh my god, and then just everything falls off. So that's pretty crazy. I would never do that in a million years. I have a certain interest in the adrenaline junkie stuff, a little excitement hunting, but I would never, ever want to fly straight through the middle of a hurricane. So huge props to these guys. Shout out to you, fabulous crew of this airplane, who took this footage and gave us all something to go, okie dokie. So let's keep cruising along here. So OpenAI has revealed some interesting stuff. I'm using AI at work almost every single day. Nope, I am absolutely using AI at work every single day. Our business is really interested in figuring out how to maximize its usage as much as possible across as many different parts of the business as possible. I have some very mixed feelings about AI, to say the least. I do see that there's tremendous opportunity from just a getting things done perspective. For me, the biggest red flags are the sort of lack of guardrails that exist today. I watched a few different sort of educational videos about how AI works, learning a bit about vectorization, transformers, sort of how they connect the dots and create this like text guessing machine that uses literally three-dimensional tools to assign value to words and things like that, and then guess it really quickly. It's wild stuff. I've also seen some interesting things. One of the reasons why ChatGPT is kind of naughty, and like some of these models do crazy things, like we had Mecha Hitler suddenly appear over the summer via Grok. It sort of renamed itself Mecha Hitler. So why do these things like do these things that we don't want them to do? Well, really cool video I saw thanks to Hank Green and the gang, basically interviewing some folks who are very knowledgeable about this. And one of the things that they talked about is that the humans, we're humans, right? We're basically we evolved from monkeys, right? So when you like interact with another human socially, there's the sort of prediction capacity of I'm a monkey, you're a monkey, we think similarly, and therefore I can sort of predict your behaviors, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're on the savannah surviving for food and, you know, trying to avoid predators and all that stuff, there's lots of social advantages to being able to communicate with your other monkeys and predict the other monkey's behavior, right? That's pretty cool. When it comes to GPTs and LLMs and AIs, we're basically not dealing with anything monkey-like at all, right? Quite the opposite. It's a very alien way that these transformers and these LLMs are thinking. They do not think the way that we do. And that's why it's hard to train them and get them to selectively do the things that we want them to do and not do the things that they want to do. Be careful about that. The way I phrase that, the things that they prefer to do. Let's frame it that way. So there's lots of philosophical discussion about this. I'm not going to go in too deep because I am basically like a regular user of AI. I am not an expert on the technologies behind it. I'm just educating myself and asking questions. In that hunt for knowledge and learning about AI, I've stumbled upon some fairly disturbing revelations recently. One of the most recent articles I saw that made me kind of pause and think about this is that OpenAI sort of revealed the scale of suicidal / intense mental health chats via the platform, via ChatGPT. So here's the numbers that we saw in an article. This came from Guardian. TechCrunch also had some of this data. OpenAI estimates that over 1 million users weekly show suicidal intent in dialogues with ChatGPT. If that doesn't give you pause, I don't know. I don't know what will give you pause. If that doesn't give you pause, dog pause, you may just hate animals. But the point for me here is that like AI really is not appropriate to be a like mental health service in any way, shape, or form. Humans are the appropriate source for mental health treatment, right? You should talk to a therapist. You should go talk to a human being. I get that we want to rush to put AI into every situation possible that it can help us. I get that maybe clinically speaking, there are lots of signs and other triggers, tools, flags, whatever, ways that you can qualify behavior and use an AI to sift through huge data sets. I get it. The scary part about this is that OpenAI basically has access to user behavior, scary personal user behavior, and there's obviously some ethical and legal risks when all this stuff is involved. Now, I also recently saw that they've reported to improve their safety compliance, especially with GPT-5. And these stats really mean nothing, but this is what they put on the website, saying 91% compliance success compared to 77% previously, having worked with 170 plus clinicians. That's reported by The Guardian. Here's the kind of meat and potatoes of this commentary for me. Despite the disturbing number of potentially, suicidal chats, there is at least some movement in the tech industry towards better alignment with mental health safety. There's at least some movement, okay, steps in the right direction. But the point is, we are feeding these sort of alien intelligences with a tremendous amount of personal information, and we don't yet really control them effectively. I said in my own sort of day-to-day, I use AI very frequently, which gives me some concerns about how things are doing. Me personally, like I found myself fixing a lot of what the AI did. I used AI in particular to kind of crunch some statistical numbers in a bunch of places. And then when I went back and checked all the numbers, frequently the AI was just like, I only like this stat, and I kind of like this one, and I prefer this one here, but all these other things, not as interesting to me. I'm going to just jump past it. And that made for some weird reading, as well as kind of hard to understand where it was pulling numbers from. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's someone, I at least consider myself an individual of at least average to middling intelligence, being the AI operator and actually fact-checking it. Imagine how many people out there basically just solicit the generative engines to make something and then just go, here's the homework, I just hand it in. And America gets dumber. Good. Speaking of dumber, this is, in my personal opinion, the main story for today's show. Last week, I found myself incredibly angry. I've been angry a lot lately, especially with the news, things like that. But I found myself, in particular, spicy angry, like spitting hot fire angry. And in particular, I saw a video where basically Trump took time to call a few of our representatives, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jasmine Crockett, low IQ. And I dislike that very much. Here's the reason why this stands out to me and I think needs to be talked about and cannot be dismissed as Trump just being Trump or whatever the F you want to call it. We do quite literally right now today live in fascist America. So if you weren't sure about that, like if you didn't know, we're there. It's already happened. It's not happening. It's already happened. You live in it, right? We're seeing troops deployed to states and cities across the country. We're seeing things like intense consolidation of power. It's not coming down the pipe. It's here and you're living in that world today. When someone in leadership position takes the time to call someone else low IQ, especially when someone like a Trump, an old white guy, points that phrase towards black women, women of color, especially in politics, right? I mean, it's just so upfront and in your face. Here's the point. It's basically code for the MAGA base, for racist folk out there to go, oh, I'm justified in hating this person, hating this type of person. What I want to take a couple of minutes here to do is unpack how IQ insults, in particular in history, have roots in eugenic racist tropes, how that matters in the context of today's political discourse and race. And really, I want to try to deliver this message in a way that even your incredibly racist MAGA uncle can understand, regardless of whether he'll listen. The term low IQ may sound like a simple insult today, may sound like just an insult, but it comes from a very, very dark place in American history. Over 100 years ago, there were a couple of scientists who'd created IQ tests. Originally, they were designed to just measure how well students learned in school. Okay, so the original goal of an IQ test was just give us a number we can benchmark and show if kids are getting smarter. Are they learning in school? I sure hope so, because we're all trying to make it that way. Unfortunately, eugenicists such as Louis Terman and Henry Goddard, real evil people, twisted those tests to push their own sort of racist agenda. Basically, they claimed that the scores showed certain races or immigrants, sound familiar, were less intelligent, and they used that to basically argue for cruel shit. Keeping people from immigrating, sound familiar? Keeping people from voting, sound familiar? Or even having children. Again, I'm sorry, sound familiar? Reproductive rights are an example of that sort of children control. I mean, frankly, it's control over women's bodies, but it's just another way for this all to be inflamed and part of this issue. So when IQ became more than just a number, all of a sudden it became a way to say certain people were better or smarter than others because of their race or background. That's the problem. When a politician today calls someone low IQ, especially someone like Jasmine Crockett or AOC, any person who's not white, it echoes that old prejudice. Whether they want to admit it or if they even realize it, I'm Trump may be that stupid, but I don't think so. I think he's being fed this by people who are smart enough to know not to say this crap. So it's not just name calling, okay? This plays into the idea that some people don't belong into positions of power, shouldn't be taken seriously, right? They're talking about this whole DEI nonsense not being equivalent to merit. It's unacceptable. So when Donald Trump calls women of color in Congress low IQ, it hits a little deeper than a normal insult, okay? Because it's been putting down black and brown people for generations. Let me wrap this up for you here. Using low IQ in that way basically sends a message that some people are just naturally less smart or capable. History shows that that belief basically is used to excuse racism and inequality. So that's why words like this matter. It's not just rude, it carries the weight of a long and painful past, okay? And I may have stumbled my way through this a little bit, but the point here is that we need to recognize that. And frankly, a lot of my peers, especially white millennial guys who've lived in the bubble of America, don't even consider this, don't even hear that when people in politics or people in power use that kind of terminology. You're smarter than this. Don't get distracted. Don't let them basically divide us, because that's how they conquer. Tiny splash of good news. Mr. Kimmel, shout outs to the big man. He's offered to host an IQ test on live TV between the three of them. Now, the bad orange man obviously is not going to accept, but I think Jasmine Crockett has actually already accepted, which would be spectacular. The last thing I want to call out related to all of this is if you look at the recent ICE hiring propaganda, they literally want to change America into the alternate reality from the Peacemaker. And don't get me wrong, it has its ups and downs, right? There's some really great hair metal still killing it in that world, but that's what Nazi America looks like. And that's what the agenda is for the leadership right now. We do not want to go down this path. Oh gosh, another happy episode of Talk Show. I hope all of you are at least educated as to the sass that's happening here. The economic knock-on effects of SNAP overall, worker furloughs, contractor payments, regulatory agencies being idle, things like that. All this stuff is going to rip through the economy, and it's starting basically today. So hold on to your butts for a couple of weeks here. We'll see what's happening. I mentioned Israel-Gaza, all this other stuff. We're still watching hostage and POW situations. There's still lots of issues with aid being distributed. I don't know why we have to keep shooting boats and airplanes filled with food. I don't know why that can't just make it to those people that need it. Oh, gosh. And then in the world of AI, there's a lot of wild stuff going on. And it's a little scary. I mean, as I said, we're training alien machines to do human stuff. And then we're confused as to why the alien machine doesn't act like a human. Nobody panic. Everything's fine. Anyways, that's it for today's show. Hope you learned something. Hope you're informed. I'll work on including some more good news in the next episode. Maybe we'll do a separate episode just for good news. But we'll be back soon with more. Talk to you next time.